Thank you very much, Kylie, and to Yasser and to Andrew. Can I say absolutely how delighted I am to be here? Can I also begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we are meeting and enjoying this beautiful meal, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. And I also want to pay my respects to elders past and present, and to acknowledge the emerging leaders, including those who are in this room. I want to emphasise up front that there can be no progress in addressing the social issues of Australia without us backing in the self-determination of Australia's First Nations people. And I know many in this room have added your voice to support for the progress to constitutional recognition and the Uluru Statement, and I encourage you to continue to do so. Look, it is really a very interesting night to be given this spot. There's a lot to discuss, and I kind of went, well, where do I start? I've just flown back from Perth this morning. Fortunately, the flight took off, and it was after a few very precious days that I got to spend with some very elderly parents that I'm still very lucky to have with me. My mum, she's 95, she's in aged care. My dad is 98. He still drives, including a Jeep, and he's able to do push-ups as well. Look, it really gave me an opportunity to reflect on my own background, actually. Look, I came from a very white, middle-class, very conservative family upbringing, from really working class roots. And as I looked at that family, I thought we were probably what our current Prime Minister would now describe as quiet Australians. But in fact, behind those closed doors of that family, my father's experience as a veteran of the Second World War had a really profound effect on all of us. Because as a young child, for me, I spent many hours sitting on the couch watching TV with him. But it wasn't any kind of ordinary TV. It was newsreels of the Second World War, over and over and over again. And mostly it was about the Holocaust, of the death camps, of Hitler and Nazi Germany, and the systemic state-sanctioned killing of millions of people who were considered to be the other in those times. People of the Jewish faith, people with disability, people like me, of diverse gender and sexuality backgrounds. So this wasn't quite the quiet upbringing that you might have expected a kid to have. But I often reflect on, in fact, how valuable that upbringing was, because it taught me a few things at a very, very young age. One was that life is really precious, so don't waste it. And that's why I'm always on the dance floor till the bitter end, every single time. And then secondly, it taught me that as human beings, we have an extraordinary capacity. We are capable of anything and everything. And we're capable of both the best and the worst. And very profoundly for me, it taught me as a young kid to be vigilant and to be brave, to not sit back and wait for somebody else, to put my hand up, to stand up, because I learned that it was in every move you make that you can either take us forward or backwards from the world that we want to make. And so right now, if you're listening to the news, for some people it feels a bit grim. The droughts, the devastating bushfires, flattening economy, stagnant wages, and clearly another pandemic does seem to be well and truly on its way. The climate crisis is here. So many people directly affected, and in some cases with devastating consequences. And underlying these, in some ways, crises, the inequality in our community means that far too many people are financially extremely vulnerable. Last week, ACOS released the research that we do now regularly with the University of New South Wales, which confirmed that once again, poverty remains deep and persistent in Australian society. We now have 1 in 8 people, and that includes 1 in 6 children, who live below the poverty line, many in regional areas. So that is well over 3 million people and includes almost 780,000 children. And this is just not right in what we all know to be overall a very wealthy and lucky country. And as these crises, particularly over the last months, have unfolded, I have been struck by how many times I've been in some rooms where people are sitting back, looking around and yearning for that thing called leadership, you know, that discussion. And then in other rooms, I'm finding myself amongst people who are putting their hands up, forging ahead, leading by doing, crossing divides, with grit and determination, friendship and humour, getting things done for good. And I know which room I want to be in, and I'm so delighted to be in this one with you. Because together we do have big decisions to make. Every move we make matters. In the face of this economic turbulence and the significant global health and economic threats that we are facing, there is a lot of debate right now about what move should we make. I assure you that ACOS and the social sector cares seriously about the economy. Because when the economy fails, it is people with the least who will suffer the most. And let there be no mistake in this room, good economic policy is good social policy. Yesterday's most recent rate cut by the Reserve Bank has resulted in Australia's lowest cash rate, as we know. We also all know that this will not be good enough. It's clear that the government needs to deliver a package of measures to help support jobs and incomes. A stimulus package now does seem inevitable. And yes, we agree it should be well targeted. But what does that really mean? In my view, this is a moment in time where we must get the move right. With the right investment for good, together we could actually support the economy, reduce poverty, reduce homelessness, lower emissions and create jobs as we make an excellent decision about how to use these fiscal policy levers. So I do want to spend a moment on this because it really does matter. The best way, I assure you, to inject the stimulus where it is needed most is to increase Newstart. Our national income support payment, which as many of you have heard me say, and if you haven't heard me say it before, I'm going to say it again. It is an absolute disgrace that we have allowed it not to be increased in real terms for over 25 years, for all that period of our sustained economic growth. Right now, people who are not able to get a job are trying to get by on $40 per day. That is the equivalent of $15,000 per year as they struggle to get a foot back into the labour market. We hear regularly from people all the time, we know now food has become the discretionary item if you're in this situation. Often the lights are off, often the heating is not on, nor is the cooling. And almost 1 million people are affected by this every single day. Newstart is now more than $100 per week below the poverty line. Lifting Newstart is the single most effective way we could reduce dramatically the level of poverty in Australia, and virtually overnight. It would give money to people who desperately need it. Young people trying to get their foot in the door of a labour market, single parents who are juggling caring responsibilities, older people, older women, people with disability who are confronting discrimination. And we are not the only ones calling for this reform. The Business Council of Australia, the ACTU, the AMA, the Country Women's Association, many commentators, Nikki Hutley from Deloitte Access Economics, KPMG, Brendan Run. I have to rattle through this because there are now so many of you. Shane Oliver, the Chief Economist at AMP, and just last week, CBA's Chief Economist Michael Blythe also said increasing Newstart would be the effective stimulus as people on the lowest incomes will spend it, as opposed to more tax cuts or bringing forward the tax cuts which have already been legislated. This morning, Chris Richardson said he would be absolutely including an increase in Newstart in this stimulus package and before bringing forward any further tax cuts. As investors and people in this room, I know you have a lot of influence in these debates right now, and so I am unashamedly appealing to you on this one, both in public and in the varied rooms of influence that you will be in, to back in this long overdue investment in giving dignity and decency to people who are experiencing the greatest risks of the vagaries of the economy right now. I want to assure you that tackling poverty is not as complex as some people like to make out that it is. Money matters for people, and if you say it doesn't matter, then you've never experienced what it's like not to have enough. But the second single most important game changer that we could forge partnerships together with would be housing. Housing as a home, housing as infrastructure, housing as a powerful economic stimulus. And you as the investor community absolutely hold some of the biggest keys. ACOS and many others across the social sector, some of you in this room, have been pushing hard for governments to finally do their bit to help us all to deliver the asset class, the large-scale investment in social and affordable housing that this nation desperately needs. Don't need to tell this room that you know we have some of the most expensive housing in the world. Right now there is a national shortage of just over 400,000 affordable homes for people who are at risk of homelessness or living on the very lowest incomes. Last year, Anglicare, one of our members, did research to confirm that if you're looking online on that weekend trying to find a rental property to live, if you're on Newstart, there was only 2 properties nationally that were affordable on that kind of income. And the main reason for this is that we've had 3 decades of inaction, of declining investment in social housing. So that's public and community housing where the rent is set by reference to your income. So it is genuinely affordable for you even when you're on the very lowest incomes. And the investment community has a unique and vital role to play here, joining forces with us as a social sector, getting in the right rooms to bring governments to the table to get some good things done. Right back in the 1950s, it was a pension fund in the US that was one of the notable first to direct all of its capital into delivering on affordable housing for its community. So this is not a new idea. And we have seen some exciting developments in private investment into affordable housing. So affordable housing is the housing that is a discount to a market rents, affordable for people on modest incomes, like an aged care worker. But still, that affordable housing is not affordable enough for people on the very lowest incomes who are living in poverty. The Labor government did introduce this thing called the National Rental Affordability Scheme, which helped to drive some of the learnings in private investment, of that kind of partnership and collaboration on investment that we needed to build a culture and an asset class in Australia. But it was abolished. Yes, it had its flaws, but it's left a big gap for us. The missing piece of this policy puzzle is an incentive payment funded by government to help you get over the line. There are some great examples. Social Ventures has just partnered to create a new housing fund called Synergis that will be officially launched very soon. It's been designed to attract private investment into the development of badly needed homes for people with a disability. It's an exciting development that we hope proves viable and continues to build confidence that if the financing is right, we can do a lot together. I recently spent some time talking with Michael Trail, who in his capacity as chair of the government's Social Impact Investing Task Force, and I've urged Michael, housing, let's get it right. We need to get government over the line on this one, and if we were to use this opportunity, as everybody is talking about the need for accelerating infrastructure investment. In fact, from the lessons we've learned of the past, it's the housing stock that actually is one of the most effective in getting very quickly jobs out into the economy. This year, of course, we've seen climate change shatter the traditional notion of the Australian summer. And there is no question that we must act, and we have not been acting enough. It's people on the lowest incomes who are already suffering the most from our failure to do so. People who have so little behind them already that living through an extreme weather event means that they are likely never to recover. It's about people who are sitting without the heating and without the cooling, experiencing the extremes of heat and often with very serious health consequences. It doesn't have to be like this. There are clear, practical solutions that we could implement right away and in partnership with the investment community to help to drive some of the changes that we need. I acknowledge the climate wars have been brutal, and I confess that I have sometimes been in that other room, despairing, where is the leadership? Why can't we get the breakthroughs that we needed? And I still struggle to contain myself every time I hear another climate denier claim that they are the advocate for people on low incomes who are struggling to pay their energy bills. No, I cry, you are not, we are. The reality is we don't need climate deniers, we need large-scale rollout of energy efficiency measures targeted for rental properties for people who are living in impossible conditions. Large-scale investment in energy efficiency would be guaranteed to reduce energy bills. We've done all of the work and it's a serious investment opportunity. Again, government would need to play its role. And again, it would be full of excellent jobs for the economy. I do want to touch, though, also on some of our respective roles in delivering the essential services that we all need to live a life with dignity. We have these crises, we will have a stimulus package. I guess we will find out what it looks like. But the reality is that over the last 5 years, we've seen billions of federal dollars taken out of some of our really crucial essential service systems, like health, like education, community services, the services that people in greatest need rely on desperately. The NDIS has been a really important exception to that. In some instances, these funding cuts to services have meant that the private sector is being asked to do more than it can and sometimes than it should. The reality is that at this point we remain sceptical about the ability for markets to drive the responses to some of the most serious social issues such as family violence, child protection or chronic unemployment or financial distress when people are at your absolute most vulnerable. We have a role to play, but not to drive the agenda. We need an adequate revenue base to fund essential services for all of us as a community, not necessarily more tax cuts or privatisation as ends in themselves. And we need those who are responsible for delivering essential services to act with integrity and with humility. We all need to be honest about the strengths that we each bring to this task. Over the last years, all of us as service sectors have been called to account for a litany of poor, unlawful and exploitative practices. A series of royal commissions have brought to light shocking examples in a range of service areas including community services, financial services, age and disability services and the criminal justice system. Various industries and spheres of public life have also been exposed to the ravages of wage theft and other forms of exploitation and abuse, including in the fields of education and training, for example, and hospitality. In all of these spheres, at the heart were too many closed doors, secrets, and cultures of tolerance, searching for the quick gain rather than the long-term investment. These cultures were allowed to flourish and for far too long. What's so encouraging for me to see is this determination, this discussion that's going on in the investment community about you using the serious power that you have to change this picture, to be asking the right questions and to be lifting up the standards that we bring to people's working lives, to the lives of our customers, to the lives of clients, indeed to the culture of our country. No one denies that these times present us with serious leadership challenges, palpable for many of us in this room tonight. However, I'm less inclined to spend time yearning for the leadership of the past, Bob, John, Paul, and instead to imagine and to help create the kind of leadership that I think we need for our now and into the future. As we move to another International Women's Day this weekend, I'm struck anew that still in far too many rooms, many of our community continue to kind of be locked out. Boardrooms, politics, generally in public life. And again, as the investment community, you absolutely have the power to force those doors open and to call for the kind of governance and leadership that we really need. Leadership that is diverse, inclusive and deeply collaborative. Leadership that draws from all ages, genders, abilities and peoples of colour. Leadership that respects the wisdom of others, including our First Nations leaders. Leadership that starts and ends with openness and transparency, working on shared goals for the common good. We always have the chance to be at our very best, and our recent bushfires have seen that in spades. As investors, you can contribute the private capital that we need to boost the construction of infrastructure that would absolutely change the quality of life for hundreds of thousands in the community. Did I mention housing? As employers, we can all offer decent wages and conditions, recruiting with diversity and developing those training programs, opening those doors desperately needed to help people who are most seriously disadvantaged in the labour market. What are companies doing about that? As influencers, let's leverage our power for good, speaking up, supporting policies that would absolutely deliver the broad benefits for our society and for our economy, including lifting Newstart, even when it doesn't help your own bottom line sometimes. We are so much more powerful when our voices are combined. Now is the time for us to act with integrity, with courage, compassion and respect for difference in every move we make, in every room that we are in. And if you can't find the room, create one. Thank you for the privilege of inviting me to spend some time with you in this room. I've been delighted to have an opportunity to speak with you, and I really look forward to us working together to get some good things done. Thanks.